Welcome to the Copperfield Electric podcast. Today we are starting a deep dive into something, well, really fundamental for modern home power: solar battery backup reliability. We're actually focusing on a single, pretty common wiring oversight. It's a mistake that, frankly, can completely defeat the whole point of investing in backup power. Think about it. You spend thousands, right? Solar panels, a big battery system, all for that peace of mind. You want the essentials running when the utility grid fails. Okay, but what if your most critical appliance, maybe that expensive fridge full of food, what if it's wired wrong and just goes dark anyway? That's exactly what we're digging into today. And we're basing this on insights from Copperfield Electric. They're a family-owned 24-hour electrician serving Orange County and Southern California. License #10 and 4740. They really focus on making sure electrical systems are safe, up to code, and actually, work when you need them most. Okay, let's unpack this frustrating oversight.
Yeah, it's fascinating because this problem, it isn't usually about the battery itself failing. It's not the tech. It's more about the integration, how everything connects inside the walls of the house. We actually saw a specific case down in Irvine that just perfectly illustrates this. It's a really widespread issue, unfortunately, and it really sets the stage for why mapping out your critical loads and getting the wiring right is arguably more important than just the size of the battery you buy.
Okay, so this Irvine homeowner, describe that scenario. It sounds, well, pretty alarming. They had a brand new solar system, right? Big battery bank, felt totally secure. Then, boom, the grid goes down, maybe just for an hour or so, and they immediately, run to the kitchen, check the lights, Wi-Fi, make sure the fridge is humming.
Exactly, and that's the moment.
That's when they discovered the refrigerator was silent, just
Yeah.
off.
All that planning, all that money spent, and suddenly they're looking at potentially hundreds of dollars in spoiled food. Why? Because a critical load failed to get power.
Wow. So it highlights this huge gap, right,
Mm.
between what the homeowner thought they had.
Mhm. They assumed, quite reasonably, that the solar and battery could power major appliances, which is true, it can. But they also assumed that installing the system meant all their critical stuff was automatically wired for backup. That was the incorrect part.
And the reality.
The finding was almost disappointingly simple, but yeah, financially devastating. The refrigerator circuit, its breaker, was still sitting in the main service panel. It was never moved over to the designated backup load panel, the special sub-panel that the solar and battery system actually feeds power into when the utility grid shuts off.
So the expensive tech, the panels, the inverter, the battery, it was all working perfectly, ready to go.
Absolutely ready. Battery full, inverter standing by.
But the wiring, maybe decades-old wiring inside the walls, that's what actually stopped the power from reaching the fridge.
That's precisely it. The moment the main utility power drops, the system automatically isolates itself from the grid, and the inverter starts sending power only to the circuits physically located in that backup panel.
So if your fridge breaker isn't in that specific box,
It gets nothing. Doesn't matter if you have enough battery power for days. That circuit is effectively dead until the grid comes back.
okay. That really clarifies the whole backup load panel distinction for you listening. It's not just about having the panel, it's about what's in it.
Correct. The functionality hinges entirely on moving the right circuits. Meticulous load management, physical relocation of breakers and wires.
But why does this happen? Why would an installer miss something seemingly so critical, like the refrigerator? Is it
Yeah.
just carelessness, or is there more complexity involved?
It can be complexity, especially with existing home wiring. It's not always straightforward. The difficulty ramps up quite a bit when you're dealing with older infrastructure. In that Irvine case, for instance, we discovered the refrigerator wasn't on a simple standard circuit. It was on something called a multi-branch circuit.
Okay, hold on. Multi-branch circuit. That sounds technical. Break that down for us. What does that mean in practical terms?
So think of a typical circuit. One hot wire bringing power in, one neutral wire taking it back, and a ground for safety. Pretty simple. A multi-branch circuit, though, it's basically like two separate circuits running together, but they share one of the wires. Specifically, they share the neutral conductor. So you end up with two hot wires, each powering different things, but only one shared neutral wire carrying the return current for both.
A shared neutral. Okay, so like two roads merging into one lane on the way back.
That's a decent analogy, yeah.
And if that single return lane gets overloaded or blocked, problems? Is that why just moving one breaker from that circuit wouldn't work?
Exactly. You've hit the danger right there.
Yeah.
Imbalance and potential overload on that shared neutral.
Mhm.
Multi-branch circuits complicate things because you can't just grab one of the hot wires in its breaker and move it to the backup panel.
Why not? What happens if you do?
Well, If you move one hot wire to the backup panel, but leave this shared neutral connected back at the main panel, now you've created a really unsafe situation. Current from the backup panel is trying to return via a neutral wire that's also potentially carrying current from the main panel. It violates electrical code.
And it could overload that neutral wire.
Precisely. You can overload it, cause it to overheat, potentially melt insulation. It's a genuine fire hazard and definitely not compliant.
Okay, that makes sense. It's complicated, but still. Isn't this something the installer should catch? If I'm paying for a professional solar and battery installation, shouldn't identifying and correctly handling these multi-branch circuits be part of the job, especially for something like a fridge?
Oh, absolutely. They should. It's best practice. But the reality on the ground during a complex installation, the focus, understandably sometimes, tends to be on the big, visible items. Getting those panels mounted perfectly on the roof, wrestling that heavy battery bank onto the wall, connecting the inverter.
The physical stuff.
Right. The detailed work of tracing existing circuits, identifying every shared neutral situation, mapping it all correctly, and then carefully moving all the necessary wires. That's meticulous. It's time-consuming. It's the behind-the-wall stuff that requires real diligence. If the initial assessment or circuit tracing isn't absolutely spot on, these complex circuits can easily get missed or mishandled.
So it sounds like the complexity of the shared neutral wiring might have actually maybe inadvertently prevented the fridge circuit from being moved correctly in the first place. Like the installer saw it was tricky and either didn't realize the full implications or maybe just skipped it.
That could be the scenario in some cases, yes. It definitely requires more work than just moving a standard circuit. You have to reassess the loads, make sure you move both hots and the shared neutral together, land them correctly. Without that careful mapping and verification, critical loads can end up stranded on the main panel just because dealing with their specific wiring was more involved.
Right, so fixing this isn't just about flipping a breaker. You might need to physically trace and reroute wires. Okay, so when Copperfield Electric came in to fix this for the Irvine homeowner, dealing with that specific multi-branch circuit for the fridge, how did they actually do it, safely and correctly? Walk us through that fix.
Sure, it needs to be done methodically. First step was absolute confirmation of the wiring. Yep, 2 hots, 1 shared neutral. Okay. Then the core part of the fix is what electricians call picking up the circuit. That means carefully disconnecting and separating all 3 wires, both hot feeds and that crucial shared neutral from where they were originally connected in the main panel, and then physically rerouting them, running them over to connect to the feed that powers the backup load panel.
Okay, so physically moving all 3 wires together as a set. That maintains the integrity of the original circuit design and avoids that dangerous neutral issue.
Exactly. All 3 land together in the backup system. And actually, in this case, since we were in there, we looked at what else was on that circuit, and it turned out the microwave shared it too.
Ah, okay. Fridge and microwave, both pretty important in a kitchen.
Right, so we optimized it. We decided to keep them together, but put them on a new dedicated breaker in the backup panel. Specifically, we use a 20-amp tandem breaker. And this is important. We made sure it had the proper handle tie.
Okay, another technical term. Tandem breaker with a handle tie. Why is that handle tie necessary here? What does it do?
The handle tie is a safety must for multi-branch circuits sharing a neutral, because you have 2 separate hot feeds on that one circuit. The handle tie is a small metal bar or clip that physically connects the 2 little switches on the tandem breaker. It ensures that if either side of the circuit has a problem, like an overload that trips the breaker, or if someone needs to shut it off manually, it forces both hot conductors to disconnect simultaneously. Both switches trip together.
Ah, I see. So if only one side tripped, the other hot wire would still be live, and current could still potentially flow back through that shared neutral wire.
Precisely. Which could still be dangerous for someone working on the circuit thinking it's off. The handle tie makes it a true common trip device, shutting down everything connected to that shared neutral at once.
Got it. That makes perfect sense for safety and code compliance. Okay, so now the fridge and microwave are together, safely wired on a handle-tied tandem breaker, and physically located in the backup panel.
Correct.
But the job's not done yet, right? You have to actually test it.
Oh, absolute non-negotiable. The ultimate test. After all the wiring is done, buttoned up, breakers labeled, we simulated a full grid outage, either by coordinating with the utility for a brief test shutdown, or more commonly, by carefully switching off the main breaker that feeds the house from the grid. And then we watched. Did the inverter kick in cleanly? Yes. Did the lights in the backup panel stay on? Yes. And most importantly, did the refrigerator and the microwave stay powered up, running smoothly on battery power?
And in the Irvine case,
They did. Both stayed on. That's the confirmation you need. If an installer just wires it and leaves without doing this kind of live test, you're really just hoping it works.
wow. Okay. So the result for that homeowner was finally actual peace of mind.
Huge relief, yeah. No more worrying about spoiled groceries every time the power flickers. And beyond that, they now have a system that's wired correctly, adhering to best practices. Critical loads identified, handled properly, complex circuits managed safely.
They got the reliability they paid for in the first place.
Exactly. Assurance that their investment translates into real backup power for their essential needs during an outage.
Okay, this is super important stuff. So let's pivot to the listener. What does this all mean for you? If you have solar and battery already, or if you're planning to get it installed, this Irvine story raises a critical question. Have you actually confirmed that your most important appliances, your critical loads, are definitely connected to that backup system?
Yeah, you really need to be proactive here. Don't just assume. If you're getting a system installed, or even if you've had one for a while and now you're wondering, there are specific questions you need to ask your installer or electrician. Or, call a company like Copperfield Electric for an assessment. First question: can you please provide me with a clear circuit map or list showing exactly which circuits in my home are connected to the backup load panel? And you need to look for specifics. Is my refrigerator on that list? Is my standalone freezer on that list?
Good point. Don't just look for kitchen, look for refrigerator.
Right. Question 2. During the installation, did you identify any multi-branch circuits with shared neutrals in my home? And if so, how exactly were those handled? You want to hear that they moved all 3 wires, 2 hots, 1 neutral, and ideally used a common trip breaker like that handle-tied tandem we discussed.
Okay. And the third key question.
Maybe the most crucial. Has a full load map been created? And, more importantly, did you test the system? Did you perform a simulated power outage after all the wiring was done to physically confirm that my designated critical loads actually stay powered by the battery?
That live test confirmation, it's essential.
It really is. It separates a completed installation from a verified one.
Okay, so those are the questions to ask. What about actionable steps? What can you, the listener, do right now or this week?
Good question. Start practical.
Yeah, I agree. First, maybe just walk through your house. Mentally or even physically, what do you absolutely need to keep running during an extended outage? Refrigerator, obviously. Freezer, if you have one. Maybe some specific lights. Your Wi-Fi router is probably critical for communication and updates. Sump pump if you have a basement. Medical equipment, of course. Make your list.
Know your priorities.
Second, take a look at your electrical panels. You'll likely have your main panel and a smaller subpanel, probably labeled backup loads or something similar. Ask your installer or get an electrician to clearly identify which breakers are in that backup panel. Do they match your critical list? Is the fridge breaker there?
And if you open that panel carefully, or better yet, have an electrician do it, look for those tandem breakers with handle ties. That can be a clue about how multi-branch circuits were handled.
What if you find your fridge breaker is still in the main panel? Or if you're just completely unsure about the whole multi-branch thing?
Then definitely schedule a professional assessment. Get an expert, like the team at Copperfield Electric, to come out and verify things. It's crucial to make sure any of those shared neutral circuits were dealt with correctly, meeting current code. You don't want lingering safety issues like potential overloads or fire risks.
That seems like really sound advice. And one last step.
Yeah, don't just set it and forget it. Your system needs occasional checkups. Periodically, maybe once a quarter or twice a year, test your backup system yourself. Simulate an outage by carefully switching off the main breaker, if you know how and are comfortable doing so safely, just briefly. Confirm your critical loads kick on as expected. It keeps you familiar with the system and ensures things haven't changed or failed silently.
That's a great habit to get into.
So if we kind of zoom out and connect all this back, the big lesson from that Irvine situation is crystal clear, isn't it? Shiny solar panels on your roof, the high-tech battery on the wall that's only part of the equation, the real reliability, the safety, the actual value of your backup system, that comes from the wiring inside your walls.
Yeah.
The load management, the details.
The behind-the-walls work, as you called it.
Exactly. The fridge might seem mundane, but when the power is out for hours or days, it becomes incredibly critical. Making sure it's wired right is where the true value lies.
And that detailed, sometimes complex electrical work is exactly what Copperfield Electric specializes in. Again, that's license, hashtag 1094740. They serve all over Orange County places like Irvine, Tustin, Costa Mesa, Santa Ana, Newport Beach, and more. They handle everything from these critical load assessments and panel upgrades to installing EV chargers. Plus, they offer 24/7 emergency service, which is vital. All right, let's wrap up with a final thought for you to consider. Don't wait for the next real blackout to discover if your investment is going to pay off. Maybe even tonight, take a look at your electrical panels. Ask yourself that key question. If the grid went dark right now, based on how this is wired, would my essentials, especially my refrigerator, actually stay on? Because when the power fails, you want the peace of mind knowing the system you paid for is supported by wiring that will actually deliver reliably and safely.